Welcome, friend,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
Indeed, leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear, that's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts, and I spilled water on my computer in all sorts of fields.
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, but you can always buy a new computer, so you'd better make the most of it.
Well, fuck, guys.
Okay.
I have a wet computer,
You
but
fuck
that's
guys.
not gonna... Well, that's true.
Any port of storm.
What a week. It is
Yeah.
episode 125 coming at you.
Yeah.
And boy, it's a show of shows.
It's an uplifting show, which is bizarre for us.
Yeah.
Especially given your subject matter,
Yeah,
Doug.
I'm going to start out by talking about the Westboro Baptists, which seems like it would be nothing but terrible.
But yours ends up... Here's the weird thing. I'm doing a story about inspiration, and I'm the least inspirational of all of our stories.
Yeah,
It's the downer.
I pull a diamond out of that pile of shit somehow.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. It's from the Bible. There's not much I can do about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm doing a little how-to today. We're going to do a little how-to about the journey you may be on, or maybe have finished, or maybe you're waiting to start. But anyway, we're going to talk about that, and hopefully it's a nice time for everyone involved. And especially because today we're sponsored by the 1991 Sizzler promotional video.
Oh, my God.
Terrific, great get for us. So, I'll include that in the show notes. If you love two different restaurant concepts in one, Sizzler 1991 is for you.
Yeah, I didn't know Sizzler. I knew Sizzler was a restaurant. I didn't know it was a way of life.
It is. So everybody tie your hair back with a ribbon.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Let's do a show.
I texted Mark, there's more shoulder pads at Sizzler than there is in the NFL.
And one last quick note, we'll talk about it again in the patron segment. We're doing patron-only content every week. If you want us to talk about a subject, send us an email, tell us you're a patron, and we'll probably talk about it.
And the rest of you don't get to hear it, so
Stay
sorry.
out in the cold.
Yeah. So...
Moving on. Let's do this show. Hey, Uncle Mark.
howdy.
There's a sign over my right shoulder in the room that I'm sitting in. A sign that you actually gave to me.
God
or at least
sends us a sign from time to time, Daniel.
And God did theoretically send this sign, but not to me and not to you, but to someone.
Yes.
The sign is not nice.
No, it's not. And I have one as well that actually hangs in my bathroom.
That's right. Uncle Doug, you have one too.
Yeah.
We're bad people just for having these signs.
Kind of.
And Uncle Doug's here to tell us all about what the signs say and why the fuck they say it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We don't have to go into the weeds of how we got those signs, but Doug, you may say why that we do have them.
Well, dear uncles, unfortunately, not everyone you meet on the street is a kind or even good person. It's often hard to tell who is good and who is bad.
Hell, not everyone you meet in this podcast is a
True
kind or good
enough.
person.
But sometimes people make it easy by, say, standing outside the funeral of a murdered gay teen with a sign that says God hates fags. Such is the case with today's particularly nasty cult, the Westboro Baptists. Located in Topeka, Kansas, who apparently just won the Super Bowl, so go Kansas. That's awesome. They didn't even play a team, and they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they're
Way to
pretty
go.
good that way.
Yeah, they were founded in November of 1955 by one Fred Waldron Phelps Sr.,
Waldron?
who recently died in March of 2014. The current number of adherents is unknown, but at its height, and most evil time, it consisted of only about 40 people, nearly all of them directly related to Phelps, except for one other family and a couple other random hangers-on. Unfortunately, almost all of you listening to my voice already know who these vile people are, and that's almost certainly because of the fact that this tiny little cult has made it its life work to be as provocative as our very liberal speech laws will allow by taking a steaming dump on basically every norm of a civilized society and rubbing our noses in our own tolerance. So, while researching this segment, I had to wallow in the darkest of swamps, which unfortunately means that I'm going to use the word fag liberally in this segment. Uncle Mark, I hope that I can
Yeah,
do that without...
Doug normally only does that off the air, you guys. So yeah.
There's no way around it, unfortunately. So let's just get into it.
The only way out is through, as
That's right.
As Judy Garland used to say.
So as far down in the dumps as I got reading about these people and watching documentaries, interviews, their own propaganda, and endless YouTube clips, I ended up in a surprisingly hopeful and self-challenging place that I did not expect. So come with me, won't you? Like all cults of personality... No. Okay, skip ahead 20 minutes. Like all cults of personality, we need to spend a little time on that personality in order to properly understand what comes next. And there's not really a lot to understand what Fred Phelps was, but he was it very early.
Yeah.
He was born in 1929 in Meridian, Mississippi to devout Methodist parents. His mother died 6 years later, so Fred was raised by his aunt until his father remarried a divorced woman in 1944. That will matter.
Shame.
Yeah. He was a stellar student, an Eagle Scout, and was accepted to West Point. However, he decided not to attend, becoming a Southern Baptist minister at the age of 17. For reasons unknown, but perhaps because he had rejected his appointment to West Point that his father had worked hard to secure, or because he rejected his father's Methodist faith, or because he rejected his father for marrying a divorced woman, Phelps separated himself from his father, stepmother, and sister and never spoke to them again. Phelps became a street preacher in California for a time before marrying and landing in Topeka, Kansas, where he became an associate pastor of the East Side Baptist Church before finally becoming the pastor of the brand new Westboro Baptist Church in 1954. Excuse me. Phelps earned a law degree from Washburn University in 1964, and in one of his many contradictions, was a champion of civil rights. He took on Jim Crow laws in Kansas with some degree of success. He was even given an award by the local branch of the NAACP.
Wait, who?
Fred Phelps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you we were talking about someone entirely. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You said nice things about somebody, and we got very confused.
Yeah, me too, believe me. However, his antics and weirdness got the best of him, and he was eventually disbarred. So
that's not just antics.
No, the story of how he got disbarred, it's just not worth going into.
Right.
But it's fucking bananas. Anyway.
Fred and his antics.
At the time of his death, he had 13 children, 54 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. This captive progeny would make up the bulk of his congregation as his increasingly unhinged rhetoric drove almost everyone else away. However, many of these relatives would end up leaving Phelps and the church, alleging severe physical and emotional abuse. Surprise.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah. In its inception, the Westboro Baptist Church was a pretty innocuous, if overly zealous branch of Southern Baptism, believing in biblical literalism and Calvinism. But Phelps distinguished himself from other Baptist ministers only in his severity and fanaticism, not in his core beliefs. That is until 1991, when Fred decided to start picketing Gage Park in Topeka, Kansas, claiming it was claiming it was, quote, a den of anonymous homosexual activity. How exactly he knew this is a mystery, but not much of one.
Where is that exactly?
Just write it down.
Yeah.
Within a couple years, protesting against homosexuality became the church's prime directive, and by 1994, they were traveling around the country spreading their own kind of homegrown hate. By their own account...
Some young man really spurned him in a way that he was not able to...
Yep. Mm-hmm. By their own account, at the high water mark of their activities in the early 2000s, they protested up to 6 locations a day and 15 on Sundays.
Jesus.
I know. They have picketed in all 50 states and claim that as of 2009 to have protested 41,000 locations. It's estimated they spend around $250K annually on protesting, and I don't know where their money comes from. It's crazy.
So can I jump in really quick? For some reason, I was online years ago in an AMA that one of the Phelps, I think it was probably Nate, one of the escapees, was giving, and my question was, where do they get the money? How do they do this? And he said, well, they all have jobs outside of this, which is hard to believe with their picketing schedule.
Yeah, right.
But like the main woman whose name I can't remember, was a successful lawyer, and they all give essentially all their money to the church. So they just tithe at 70%, right? That's where the money comes from.
That's crazy.
There you go.
One of the things they are best known for is their hate-filled signage. Their printing operation is truly remarkable. They have produced thousands upon thousands of colorful rectangular signs with slogans like, God hates fags, God hates Jews, God sent the shooter, God sent AIDS, thank God for dead soldiers, Thank God for IEDs, Fag Enabler in Hell, Fag Military, Fags Are Beasts, and Fags Burn in Hell, among hundreds of others.
Well, Doug, I think on the other side of your sign, doesn't it just say God hates you?
That's the one I have. That's actually the one that's facing out. God hates you. Which,
just in case, Doug, if you don't know who's coming at you, just that one will work. Right?
I love that. It puts me so perfectly in my place in the universe.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. God is all powerful. He made everything, and he personally hates me.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no more mysteries to solve.
He created you and went, man, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, this part of my research I did in a coffee shop, and scrolling through page after page of these signs made me no friends.
I'll tell you what, man. This show has fucked my Google history.
For sure.
Like all of the ads that are targeted to us are forever ruined.
The algorithm probably thinks of me as a pretty woke Nazi.
Right.
So, the provenance of this, how these signs came to us, is several years ago, me and a friend found out that they were making a stop here in Salt Lake to protest a church. It turned out not to be a Mormon one, weirdly. So we headed down to see them for ourselves. Their protests are fairly quick. They show up and stand around until the local press shows up, and then poof.
Yeah, it's all about getting the press.
That's all it is. My buddy happens to be a photographer, so we snapped a few photos of them. We ended up chatting with them a little bit, and again, we were surprised by their concurrent fanaticism and rationality.
Yeah.
My buddy offered to send them some pictures, and they immediately said yes, and that's how one piece of evil Americana hangs in my bathroom.
Yeah, it was a trade. It was a trade.
Yeah,
so we got a box of like real Fred Phelps clip art hate.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. The one that's here in the studio says on one side it says God hates fags, and on the other side it says God hates Jews, and it's a much better side because the O in God is a smiley face, and it's wearing a rabbinical sort of so Jewish hat and has the earlocks,
The tifilum
coming down.
It's got the tifilum. Yeah.
So there's a little bit
it's a masterwork,
sparkle.
really.
Yeah,
It really is.
So, like any junkie that needs a bigger and bigger hit to get high, the Westboro Baptists have escalated their protests over the years, eventually employing their most despicable and effective tactic, protesting funerals.
Yeah.
Despicable because there may be no lower and loathsome an act than preying on grieving families for the purposes of garnering publicity. Effective because garnering publicity is the oxygen to Phelps and his crew.
Yeah.
And this tactic has made them internationally known. In perhaps history's truest adherence to the axiom, all publicity is good publicity, the Westboro Baptists welcome your hate as long as it gets them on TV or in the newspaper. In the late 90s and especially through the early 2000s, Phelps and his followers showed up at funerals for victims of the Sago mine disaster, the Aurora theater shooting, the Sandy Hook school shooting,
the
Pulse nightclub shooting, the funerals of dead soldiers, as well as the funerals of Matthew Shepard, Gordon B. Hinckley, George Tiller, and Michael Jackson, to name just a few.
Gordon Hinckley was the president of the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
So that for you non-Mos out there.
That name is not like the others.
And a well-known champion of gay rights? What the fuck is that symbol? I don't know. What?
So nowadays, the mere threat of appearing sends people into a frenzy, a fact that the Westboro Baptists take full advantage of.
Oh, they love it.
Yep, they threaten to show up to funerals all over the country, only not to bother to show up because they got what they wanted already. Their hate is not restricted to homosexuals. Fred Phelps had plenty of hate in his heart for everyone, including atheists, Mormons, Hindus, Catholics, Muslims, more moderate Christians, which from the perspective of the Westboro Baptists is all Christians.
All everybody's.
Yeah, and there is no love lost between Phelps and every sect of Christianity whose views he shares, as he has been denounced by everyone from the Southern Poverty Law Center to the 700 Club. The universal condemnation from Christian groups came in spite of the fact that there is really no daylight between the beliefs of the Westboro Baptists and every other Baptist/evangelical group in America. It's just a disagreement about tactics.
And usage of the word fag.
Yes.
Yeah.
But their most burning and alarming hate is reserved for the Jews. Their website, of course, godhatesfags.com, has an incredible amount of content updated nearly every day, including sermons, articles, clips of their protests, and even badly produced musical parodies to such songs as Come Together by the Beatles, Beat It by Michael Jackson, and Happy by Pharrell Williams.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they're really, really weird. They do choreographed dance numbers to these songs that they've written new lyrics for.
Gay. Wow. Do they not know that choreography is pretty gay?
Well, Mark, you haven't seen this choreography.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be immediately disowned by any gay person for sure.
But their anti-Semitic content makes everything else they do seem G-rated by comparison.
Really?
This stuff is so shocking and so vile that I absolutely could not watch it at the coffee shop. In fact, when I went home, I pulled the blinds to make sure no one could see it from the street.
Wow.
It is the most evil and demented anti-Semitic stuff I have ever seen. I am including Nazi propaganda in this. One of the only videos tame enough to even talk about is of two men dressed as Hasidic Jews wrestling each other for several minutes over a loose penny on the street.
Oh, my God.
Everything else is degrees worse than that. And yes, they deny the Holocaust and protest Jewish sites, particularly on Jewish holidays. So we need to talk about the why for a second. Why are they doing this, and what are they hoping to accomplish? From refugees of the church, there seems to be several overlapping purposes. The first and foremost is notoriety, which is also truly the most galling. Here's the thing about them. If you watch them on YouTube or in some of the documentaries about them, they don't come across as deranged. No. Even if they're talking about their most vile beliefs, they are surprisingly cogent, even up to date on pop culture and politics. In fact, several of them have law degrees, which is one of the ways they're able to afford their near constant stream of lawsuits. Honestly, they sound more grounded and coherent than House and Senate Republicans, and for real, even when defending their beliefs. So, interviews with the ones who have managed to escape bear out the fact that they are not stupid rubes, which leads us to a second possible purpose to their acts. One of the more jarring visuals at any Westboro Baptist protest is the presence of very young children, some too young to even read, holding profane and hateful signs. Here's the thing, and this is also borne out by escapees. They indoctrinate their children to believe that the world at large and all outsiders are evil, violent, angry, and sinful, and that their enemies are angry that they are merely trying to spread God's word. Then they go to these protests, holding signs they can't even read, and total strangers scream at them, flip them off, spit on them, and swear at them. Very often, gay couples will make out in front of them as a protest move.
Which we encourage.
Of course.
That's the only thing that I would encourage of all of them.
Right.
Don't spit on them or don't even engage with them.
Of course not, yeah.
But if you want to make out with someone of the same gender, go for it.
Have at it. And the problem is, to your point, Uncle Dan, these reactions to their actions are understandable and even appropriate from our point of view. But for these children, it's proof positive that everything their parents are telling them about the world is true, and that's what leads to their terrifyingly lucid fanaticism as they become adults.
Right.
Fortunately, their awful tactics have not grown into a larger movement and have alienated them as much as they have made them famous. So, but the fact of the matter is the Westboro Baptists want our hate, seek our hate, cultivate our hate, and then reap our hate for their own purposes. And at least according to them, it's working. So here's just two examples of that. In 1996, two men left a pipe bomb outside Fred's daughter's house, believing it to be his. The bomb damaged an SUV and a fence, and the two men were caught and punished. This was one of their first major PR victories, making them national figures, to their delight.
Right.
They have been sued countless times by victims of families and municipalities and have won almost all of them. The most famous case involving these monsters is Snyder v. Phelps, which involved the funeral of Lance Corporal Matthew A. Snyder. Matthew was killed in a non-combat vehicle accident in Iraq in 2006. At his funeral in Maryland, the Westboro Baptists showed up and protested. They had signs that read, "Fag troops, Semper Fi fags, thank God for dead troops, and God hates you." Not only did the Westboro Baptists protest the funeral, they published statements online that denounced the Snyder family and blamed them for the death of their son because they were Catholic and had let their son join the military. So Matthew's father, Albert, sued them for intrusion upon seclusion, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil conspiracy. He won the case in the District Court of Maryland, and the jury awarded him $10.9 million in damages.
Oh, you're going to make me sad right now.
I am, yeah.
Because that made me happy.
I'm going to make you very sad. The ruling was appealed and made its way inevitably toward the Supreme Court. Publicity of this case made international news and was therefore seen as a huge PR win by Phelps and crew. They even made signs that said, "Thank God for $10.9 million." And here's how scrambled things got politically. NPR, the ACLU, and the Associated Press wrote briefs in support of the Westboro Baptists, while Bill O'Reilly and Mitch McConnell pledged support for Snyder.
Because they were supporting the First Amendment rights?
Yes, the ACLU was supporting First Amendment rights, and of course Bill O'Reilly and McConnell reflexively support the troops. But it's, these people scramble us.
Yeah.
It's hard to see who the good guys and bad guys are. The case reached the Supreme Court in 2011, and Phelps won the case 8-1, with only Justice Alito dissenting. Excuse me. Again, words I thought I would never say, Alito's dissent is persuasive, arguing that, quote, in order to have a society in which public issues can be openly and vigorously debated, it is not necessary to allow the brutalization of innocent victims like petitioner, end quote. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good point.
Yeah.
And indeed, many civilized countries in the world have anti-hate speech laws, including Germany, France, and the UK. But before we even think about going down that road, we must consider how ineffective those laws have been of late in curbing the reemergence of anti-Semitism and right-wing fascism. And if you'd asked me about enacting some form of anti-hate speech laws here 3 years ago, I might have been a pretty open audience. But, you know, Bill Barr is in charge of our Justice Department,
right,
and Paula White is whispering in the ear of the president. Like, I think we need the most liberal interpretation of free speech we can get right now, right? So
maybe, I don't know. Maybe nobody's allowed to speak for a minute.
I would be fine with that.
Everybody shut up for just a minute.
Just a minute.
Freedom of speech also guarantees freedom of silence, you know. You don't have you don't have to say anything.
Can that be the slogan of the podcast going forward?
Yes. Everyone loves an audio format entertainment that's quiet.
Of us yelling, shut up, yous.
So here's the thing, though. If we continue to have these broad laws protecting free speech, which have to include a tolerant attitude towards religious belief, we are always going to have people pushing the boundaries like the Westboro Baptist on the right and Kanye West on the left.
Kanye West's on the left?
I don't know. I just thought I'd throw Kanye West in there because he's crazy.
Would you call that left? I don't think that's left, but point taken.
This leads us to the final question. What the fuck are we supposed to do with these people? The reaction most of us have had, myself included, is to treat them badly. I didn't flip them off or yell at them when I saw them face to face, but nor was I kind to them, and I didn't do anything to stop the people who were being mean to them.
Right.
This reaction is what they want. Think of it all from the perspective of these poor children and how us taking the easy bait perpetuates the hate of the parents and very possibly delays or even prevents the children from getting out. So, in all this disheartening content, I found myself watching the TED Talk of Megan Phelps Roper, one of the granddaughters of Fred Phelps, who for many years featured prominently in protests and interviews and was very nearly the face of the movement. So,
yeah, just even as a little girl.
Well, from the time she was little and all through her teens and into her 20s, she was all over their media. No, obviously no longer, because several years ago she managed to get away and leave all that hate behind. And her journey is very instructive to the question of how to deal with people trapped in hate. Conversely to pretty much everyone else on Earth, her interactions online were far more calm and considered than her interactions in real life. This was, of course, because in person, the Westboro Baptists are designed to bypass your empathy and trigger your rage, but online, they're just words in a DM.
Right.
So she began conversing with a few people for the first time in her life who were not mean to her, didn't yell at her, and engaged her on the merits of her arguments. This kindness inevitably led her to question her strident views, which led to more questions, and eventually she got out. So in her TED Talk, in a hopeful tone, she said that the answer to the above question is both simple and hard, and named 4 tactics that we should employ if we want to have any kind of positive effect on people like her. Number 1, and this is tough, is don't assume bad intentions. This is perhaps the hardest thing to do, because what else can you assume about someone shouting fag at a grieving family of a murdered teen?
Maybe they're doing it out of love.
That's what's crazy. According to Megan, the Westboro Baptists believe what they're saying, and from their point of view and in their minds, their intent is good.
I don't question their sincerity. I think that it's awful what they're doing, but I don't question their sincerity.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We shouldn't excuse their actions or welcome their beliefs. Only we should empathize with them, regardless of their lack of empathy for others, because a lack of empathy cannot be cured by a lack of empathy.
Right, exactly.
Her second tactic is ask questions. This has several effects. Having to explain one's belief in detail forces one to really think about their beliefs, which in a lot of cases, especially people trapped in religious hate, they have never really done.
Right.
So it also shows that you're listening to them, which massively de-escalates the conversation and removes snarky retorts from their rhetorical defenses. So she said that was one of the better tactics. Third, obviously, is stay calm. It's really hard to do. But again, her being online, she said that this was actually really helpful because people could walk away from the conversation for a minute or an hour or a day, chill out and come back to it. We can't really do that in person.
Well, not if they're literally in 5 minutes going to be in the next state.
Precisely. And that's one of their, it works to their advantage. Her last piece of advice, and this is really interesting, was to make the argument. For 2.5 decades, she fought with nearly every stranger she ever met, but none of them ever made the argument for why what she believed might be flawed or even wrong. People got so tripped up on their provocations that they never methodically laid out an alternative.
Interesting.
Yeah, this was so effective for Megan that she not only saw the merits of what others were saying, but she started to see the flaws in her own thinking. And within a year of beginning these interactions, she had left the church with one of her sisters and even lived for a short time with a rabbi that only months before she was protesting.
Wow.
So there's hope. Yeah, Tony McAleer from Beyond Hate shared an incredible anecdote with us when we interviewed him back in episode 63 about a black woman working at McDonald's noticing the swastika tattooed on a neo-Nazi's hand,
right,
saying, "Oh, honey, you're better than that." It took years, but that tiny little act got him out.
Yeah, it was so stuck in his head he couldn't shake it. It drove him crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I myself might have seemed lost to Mormonism when I was 18, but luckily my older brother patiently challenged my beliefs and planted seeds of doubt that I sowed many years later. Now,
yeah, well, whoever that was. He's not all heroes wear capes. We'll never know. We'll never know who that was.
Well, one might say to me that my lack of empathy, this segment has a lack of empathy because of how I've talked about the Westboro Baptists, and there's a little bit of validity to that. In fact, Megan's words made me think about going back and softening some of my language. But I thought it would be more valuable for us to get to this place together. I hate what they do. I hate their actions and their rhetoric. But given the chance, do I want to help them or do I want to perpetuate their evil?
Because it's true, like when you take their bait, when their hatred inspires hatred in you, guess who just won?
Yeah, exactly.
Guess who just defeated their enemy?
Yeah, and the unfortunate truth is that some people are beyond help.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. Fred Phelps was one of those people.
Well, now that he's dead, he's especially beyond help.
Right, by definition. He died as evil and vile as he was as a teenager. His wife and some of his progeny might be beyond helping too. For example, he suffered from dementia in his final years, which they took to mean that God had condemned him, leading them to bury him without a funeral.
What? They didn't even give him a funeral?
No. Oh, wow. He sowed what he reaped on that one.
Yeah, I mean...
Or God hates flowers, I guess.
Yeah, but Megan and several others were just as seemingly beyond help until they weren't. If, Fred Phelps' father had hugged him one more time, or if he'd just come out of the blessed closet, things might have ended differently, but they didn't. So after his death, the kind of the wind's gone out of the sails of the movement. They're still around, they're still posting, they're still protesting, but, hopefully with any luck, this movement, whatever it is, will die on the vine and make room for the next worst cult in America.
I while you were starting this thing, I looked up Westboro Baptist Church on Google and noticed that they had some reviews. So I clicked on the reviews of it. They're quite delightful, the Google reviews of the Westboro Baptist Church, including the first one, best Chinese restaurant around. Me and my gay partner had a wonderful time at this restaurant. The second one, Asian massage parlor in the back is amazing. We started my friend's bachelor party here in hopes of getting a happy ending, and we weren't disappointed. People were having fun. That's all I'm saying. I've been to the Westboro Baptist Church.
Have you?
I've been there, in Topeka.
Yeah.
Me and Frank from Thank God I'm Atheist went there on our little journey. And across the street, we spent a bunch of time across the street at the Equality House, which is a delightful place where a house that they just painted in a rainbow. Just to fuck with them.
Poke him in the eye.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Let's pray and hope that this thing just withers away.
Indeed. Well, thanks, Doug. That was depressing and then uplifting.
Good.
Hopefully they'll soon all be dead like Fred. Let's move on.
Oh, Jesus.
Uncle Doug.
Hello.
Sometimes, I don't know where to turn.
All right.
And I find I need inspiration in this life. But let me tell you, it can't just come from any place.
No.
It's got to come from a really weird, shambly collection of stories from Bronze Age Judea.
When I'm trying to figure out where to start looking for inspiration, I always start with the worst place.
Yeah.
And then work backwards from that.
Yeah, you and I are not, we're not so different.
You got to catch them unawares like that.
Yeah.
When you want to sneak up on inspiration and say,
Dan,
boom.
Do you have inspiration for us?
Well, as you know, fellas, I often venture into the holy texts. And as I've said before, when I decide to do a segment about the Bible, I used to start by searching like crazy Bible story or strange Bible story. And then there was a turning point in episode 21, jawbone of an asshole, where I did the story of Samson and realized I didn't need to look for obscure outlier stories. The most important stories that we all thought we knew were every bit as crazy, stupid, and immoral. So now my search terms are more like famous Bible stories or important Bible stories or whatever. And so far, I have yet to be disappointed in my quest to be horrified by this book. For today's segment, I did a new one. You guys were hinting at it. Inspiring Bible stories. Or inspirational. I don't know, something along those lines. Now, one of the first links that came up was from a blog called The Christian Crier, which is hosted on Patheos, which is the same religion-themed network that Hemant Mehta does the Friendly Atheist blog on. The name Christian Crier could be a very self-aware admission that their gnashing of teeth about Christian persecution is really just them being giant titty babies. But I'm guessing they mean crier like a town crier. Anyway, the article from the Christian Crier was promisingly titled 5 Inspirational Bible Stories with Short Summaries.
Okay. That's what I like in my stories is a summary.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, these summary sections were usually shorter or longer rather than the scripture themselves. But that's fine. It seemed like exactly the right
That seems like a tell.
thing.
Yeah.
So I clicked it. And I read it. And I read it again. Look, my intention had been to choose one of the 5 stories and tell it on the show. But here's the thing. I was struggling to even find a story in most of the stories.
Right.
They were nubbins. They were snippets. Just bits of stories. And holy shit! This is what we're supposed to be inspired by? They couldn't even find nubbins that were inspiring without twisting and contorting to get there.
Right.
So, instead of a Bible story, we're going to be discussing the blog post 5 Inspirational Bible Stories with Short Summaries from the Christian Crier and its author, Pastor Jack Wellman. The Bible, this is how it...
Okay, his name is Jack Wellman.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Wellman?
Jack Well? Oh, man.
Jack Wellman.
Yeah.
He opens thusly. The Bible contains many inspirational stories. What are 5 of the most inspirational ones? Here are 5 inspirational stories from Scripture and the possible takeaways or lessons that we can glean from them. It's hard to pick only 5 of them, but here are 5 that I think are truly inspirational.
Okay.
Well, great, Pastor Wellman. Can't wait. He opens on Genesis 32:22 through 30.
I can already call bullshit on this.
Well, did you hear me say the word Genesis just then?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, we talked about these scriptures way back in episode 14, lying liars and their 12 tribes. It's the story of Jacob wrestling with God and beating him.
Right.
It should be a believer's worst fucking nightmare. I'll save you some pain and only read the most relevant parts. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. Remember how we talked about just a man just wrestled with him?
Yep. Came out of nowhere.
You can visualize that as the guy came running at full tilt out of the reeds.
Jumped out of the bushes. Wrestle! Anyway, when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." What a great story.
Yeah, really.
You guys.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm using the NIV, the New International Version. I don't know what version Pastor Wellman used, but it was way more confusing, and I'm guessing that was part of the point. Anyway, this is an obviously stupid and utterly inexplicable passage about wrestling with randos all night long, and then getting to change, and then they get to change your name, and holy shit, that was God, and you beat him.
Right. But he didn't tell him his name, and he didn't know that was God, so he just concluded it was God. So what the fuck? How does he know what the fuck he's talking about? Inspiration.
No, it's definitely God, and the way that you know it's God is because he gets to change your name when you wrestle him.
Right, but doesn't the mere fact that he couldn't be beaten, that Jacob beat him, mean that it cannot be God? Right?
Shut your fucking mouth. God damn you.
Can God make a Jacob so powerful that he can't beat him in a wrestle?
Yes, he can.
Yeah.
So obviously we have some issues with this passage, but this is from a blog post about inspiration. So let's see what Pastor Wellman has to say. What's so gall-dang inspiring here? I will also try to edit down his stuff to just pertinent things from here on in. So from the blog. When Jacob wrestled with a, quote, man until the dawn, he saw that Jacob was not going to give up. Jacob asked what this man's name was, but in Jewish culture, when you asked for someone's name, it was the same as saying you have preeminence or dominance over them. And that is why the other man said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But like, how does anyone know
Neither
anybody's
does he.
name?
Exactly.
If you're not allowed to ask
Yeah.
it.
Neither does he.
Anyway, then he blessed Jacob, and Jacob's name was then changed to Israel, which in the Hebrew is Yisrael, and means God prevails, which God did when he wrestled with Jacob.
But
No, the fuck he didn't.
I know.
Did you just read the same passage that I just read? Because he gave up. God tapped out 100%.
Yeah.
He continues, this may have been a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. This may be why Jacob named the place Peniel, which in Hebrew is Penuel, which means facing God. Jacob faced God and didn't give up. Did you wrestle to find the... Oh, wait, sorry. Do you wrestle to find the will of God? Many of us do. Do like Jacob did. Don't give up. Be persistent. You might not see the face of God, but you may find his will. If you stay in the word of God and wrestle with it, you will find the revealed will of God, which can show you the specific will of God for your life, which does not appear in the scriptures.
Okay, I think that sound I hear is the metaphor straining.
No, that's
load.
That sound you hear is there being no metaphor and not being able to figure out what the hell he's talking about.
Yes, both stories have the word wrestling.
Uh-huh. Good.
And that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
What was all that stuff about? Nah, man. Everything's a travesty with you. So here's something. I did some research, and Israel doesn't mean God prevails. It means something more like fought with God.
Oh.
But it was hard to find a scholar willing to admit that that's what it means. They always change something around to make it seem, or to make it make more sense to them. They say it means God contends, or, God prevails, or whatever. Even when it's a rabbi and a Hebrew scholar who gets it right, he talks about how Jacob wrestles with an angel, not God himself, but his new name is struggled with God.
Right.
Do you guys even hear yourselves?
I know.
Do you listen?
No.
Okay, so that was, super inspiring. Let's move on to the next one. Hebrews 11, verses 8 through 12. I'll just read it to you. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so, from this one man, he, as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore.
Okay.
Woo!
Was there a story in there?
Chills, right? You guys? Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many chills.
Who could hear that and not be inspired?
Yeah.
But let's just assume for a moment that you're a total fucking idiot and are unable to immediately figure out what's so amazingly inspirational. I'll let Pastor Wellman fill in the gaps. By Abram, later changed by God to Abraham. Why are we obsessed with the name-changing thing? Leaving his own nation of Ur, which was one of the most powerful and wealthy nations in the world, to start and become the father of nations, and the one through whom all families, nations, would be blessed, clearly means that this blessing would come through the promised seed, Jesus Christ. We can imply, and I think he means infer, that when God said, all families of the earth shall be blessed, that nations are simply families grown large. I'm not sure why that follows.
Wait, what?
Also, what does that have to do with the fucking passage? Like, I didn't understand any of that. He goes on, though. Don't worry, there's more.
Great.
How hard would it be for you to leave your family, your city, your state, your nation, your work, and everything familiar to you, including your job, which would be leaving your financial security? No question mark on that question, by the way, which could just be a typo, but points to something true about these people, which is that they ask a lot of questions that they don't actually want you to answer.
Right.
By the way, dying to know this guy's stance on immigration in the United States, but that's another topic entirely. Yeah.
Also, not for nothing, lots of people uproot themselves, leave their family and everything, and go to a new place. It's really not a big deal at all.
All the fucking time.
Well, it's a big deal, but zillions of people have done it.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for the inspiration on that. He says that Abraham personified the just shall live by faith. And as such a prototype, it was a prototype for living by faith, blah, 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 blah. He also, in this section, goes into a whole thing about Paul, in striking a blow against the Judaizers, brilliantly links the past with the present. In Galatians 3:7-8, shows that Abraham was saved by faith and that, quote, those who claimed to be his children was not enough. By the way, I'm reading this verbatim. I know that none of the tenses match and everything, but just sick. Was not enough because the fact that, quote, all nations shall be blessed through Abraham is about grace and not race. Paul was adamant about dropping the boundary markers that inevitably provoke divisions between the Jews and the Gentiles. Now, I had to look up the word Judaizers. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that word before. It's definitely
Judaizers?
It's not one that's used much in Mormonism.
No.
Especially because what it means is something that Mormons could easily be accused of.
Is it a battery you can use on the Sabbath?
I like it. They got a little kosher bunny going boom, boom, boom. Anyway, in this context, it seems to mean Christians who really think like idiots that they should actually follow all the rules in the Bible, even the really, really Jewy ones. It's the Christians who haven't figured out that you're not supposed to be Jews anymore.
Right.
So I guess what Pastor Wellman is saying is mainly unrelated to the passage he quoted, but faith is good, I guess. So next up, a bit from Matthew 4. Verses 1-11. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. This is actually my favorite of these stories. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry, which, that makes sense. The tempter came to him and said, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Jesus answered, it is written, Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God."
Okay.
Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, 'He will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone.' Jesus answered him, 'It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test.' Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And all this will I give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. Okay.
Okay.
He got very hungry and still didn't fall for the tricks of talk to that rock and see if it turns into bread, or throw yourself from this tower and see if God catches you, or even the dreaded, look at all these places in a 20-mile radius. You want them?
Right.
So, yeah, I guess that's good. And the fasting sounds hard. Gandhi only made it to 21 days of fasting like a little bitch. But 40 is that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think Bobby Sands died at 40.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, yeah.
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 But what are we to be inspired by in this story? How does this apply to non-demigods? Thoughts, gentlemen? Any thoughts?
No.
None. Hungry? That's kind of all I got.
Right. Good. Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
Let's see what Pastor Wellman has to say. "There is no human that has ever lived nor will ever live that could have resisted such a temptation as this that Jesus endured."
Well, then what does it matter?
Yeah, exactly.
Then how does it apply to human life? It doesn't fucking matter. Because he was a god. Who
Yeah.
cares?
I think that's a brilliant response. My
Yeah.
response was just, he was tempted to throw himself off of a tower, and he said no, and we're supposed to be impressed?
Yeah.
Because I think I could have resisted all of those temptations real easy.
Yeah. Throw Margot Robbie at me and we're talking, right?
Right, yeah. But yeah, tempt me with, I mean, if I were, 40 days into a fast, bread might be tempting. But if I've made it 40 days, guess what? Psh, rock bread isn't really going to do it for me, buddy. Anyway, Pastor Wellman goes on. "His trip into the wilderness came with no food and possible no water." No,
Possible?
that's not. Well, yeah, sick again. But no, that's actually not possible. But he fasted for 40 days, and he used the word of God as his offensive weapon. You'll notice that the devil knows the scriptures quite well, except that he always twists them and takes them out of context.
Oh, no. Who would do a thing
Does he
like
do
that?
Pastor? Is that the thing that the devil does?
Can't take the scriptures out of context.
Oh, that would be horrible, wouldn't it, you guys?
Yeah.
So he goes on. He also offered Jesus an easy way out, to take the world's kingdoms from Satan, showing that Satan is the god of this world, which there's a problematic theology.
I was just going to say
that they use all the time, and it's terrifying.
Hail Satan.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, how could he have offered them to Jesus? Fair enough. What Satan was really trying to do was get Jesus to go around the cross, weird wording, which meant he would not have been saved from our sins. Which meant we would not have been saved from our sins. Like Israel in the wilderness, they needed the daily bread, and so do we and the word of God, because as Jesus said, physical bread, or food, is never enough to keep Satan away. This guy makes no sense.
Okay.
It's so hard. I'm skipping the rest. I had more. I'm done. I am. It's so nonsensical.
Okay, I'll just have to live with this level of inspiration, Dan, until next time.
Here's the thing. I'm out of time and patience, but the next two passages were just as dumb. One went back to Hebrews 11, like we wouldn't notice, which is that whole book is Paul extolling the virtues of various people, and it all starts with the in faith, Moses did this, and in faith, Abraham did that, and in faith... So it's the same fucking thing. It's just that this one talks about Moses instead of Abraham. And Pastor Wellman's groundbreaking conclusion is, it's good to do what God tells you to do.
Is this what is the age group these are written for? Who is Pastor Wellman writing for here?
There's no indication that this is for anything but grown-ass adults.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
I derive more inspiration from that poster with the kitten hanging from the tree.
Right?
Hang in there. I will hang in there.
Thanks, kitten. The last passage, just so that you guys know, is from Acts 7. It's the stoning to death of Stephen after he had been yelling at everyone that they were dirty, dirty sinners. But then, as he was dying, asked God to forgive the people who were killing him, which to me is just running the same gag twice in the Bible. Come on, New Testament, get your act together.
And you know who was standing watching that stoning?
Who?
Saul.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, you know your Bible. Good job.
Do.
So
just kind of puts in question his morality, but that's another story for another day.
And he was fine with
that's
it,
not
too.
the only thing that puts
was-
Saul's morality in question, but go on.
Yeah, the whole point is that the 5 scriptures that that this pastor decided would inspire us the most, I literally, if I strain myself, I can maybe come up with some good morals of some of the stories on some level, but even his own explanations about why they're inspirational don't work.
Yeah.
And Lord knows if you just told somebody one of these stories and said, is that inspirational? Nobody would be like, oh, yeah.
Well,
I get it.
Your summary has little to nothing to do with the actual story.
Right.
So you're making it up. Make it fucking inspirational.
Yeah.
Like why are you sucking at this so hard?
Yeah. Just make it say, he overcame something. He doesn't.
No.
Yeah. So I think there can be no better way to end this with just the question posed by Uncle Doug. Hey, Christianity, why are you sucking at this so hard?
Yeah.
You've
had 2,000 fucking years.
Right?
Do better. Jesus Christ. Put us out of a job. I'm sick of this shit.
Right.
Fuck. All right. Well, Wonder Bible, call me.
Moving on. Fellas.
Well, hello.
You won't believe it.
Present.
You will not believe it. But we had people once again decide that they are going to part with their shekels and put them in our little collection plate. So that's a delightful thing that everybody should do.
Yes.
But it's something that these people have done. And so we are going to give thanks now to Scott. You're amazing. Keith, Amberance or Amberance. I don't know.
Ambulance.
Ambulance is very much that. And we're gonna give. We got to do some saints. It's a triumvirate of saint giving.
Holy shit!
So I'm gonna start. I'll start us off for Trevlak, who gets a saint, and Trevlak, your saint is Saint Bartholomew of Toledo. And Saint Bartholomew is the patron saint of orange trees and of large Ferris wheels, and the patron saint of sharks.
All right.
So just the whole species family kingdom.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it?
So there you go. That was that's your very own patron saint. Nobody else can use them. And Uncle Mark, why don't you do the same for Sally?
Oh, Sally. I wasn't expecting a Sally, but here goes. That really throws me off my fucking game here. So, but I got to get back on the saint game. So Sally, of course, the spirits are speaking to me. Your patron saint is naturally Saint Nincompoopas of Cape Canaveral. And Saint Nincompoopas is, first of all, the only completely genderless saint so far.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, completely genderless. And that is the patron saint of moist towelettes, any long-standing hopscotch-based grudges that last into adulthood, and people who almost want it craps.
Oh man, I want
Yeah.
that saint.
That was a
I
good
thought that was
saint.
my.
I
I
know.
will never forgive.
I know.
Susie Johnson
Sally came along and took her.
for that hopscotch incident.
Yeah.
And Uncle Doug, we had someone uptick to saint level, so you have to provide a saint for Andromeda.
Ooh, Andromeda.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a star-based uptick.
Yeah.
Andromeda, your saint is Saint Dominicius. Dominicius is the patron saint of Kansas City, but Kansas City, Kansas, not the one in Missouri.
Not that other one.
Yep.
That nobody knows about and isn't real.
Yep, she is the patron saint of unearned accolades, loose screws, and 747s.
Nice.
Wow.
Which, if you have a loose screw on your 747, you're really going to need to pray to this
That's
thing.
right.
Yeah. Then you could end up with an unearned accolade.
So there you go. Thanks all of you for parting with a little bit of cash every episode, just so that we can keep going.
Yeah.
It is so we're so grateful. If you yourself want to do that, it's pretty easy. You just go to howtoheretic.com and then click on the place where it says click here to support us or whatever. And then you just go to Patreon and you sign up at whatever level pleases you. And then if you can't do that, or even if you can, either way, give us 5 stars on everything to counteract the 1-star reviews of people who haven't listened to our show because they're rude.
That's right. So do that. We love you, and see you on the other side.
Uncle Dan,
Hey,
this is a strange trip we find ourselves on.
by that do you mean this life?
This mortal coil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bizarre little thing we do.
Yep. From birth to death, we're all going in one direction. And it's
I started at death.
Do you think that's why the band is called that, One Direction? It's this kind of existential boy band.
I would listen to them if like I don't listen to them.
It's One Direction.
Like you don't.
Named after Camus and his.
I was going to say Doug has season tickets, but I don't think that's how boy bands work. But
It should be. It should be.
Well, Uncle Mark, you want to talk to us a little bit about that journey.
yeah, so this is a little bit of a how-to, and those of us, probably almost every single person that's listening to this now is someplace along a certain journey. So let me paint a picture, and then we're going to get into a little bit of a conversation. So there you were, minding your own business on your own road to Damascus. Saul's come up a couple times in this show. When something happened, an inciting incident, a catalyzing event, maybe a flash, maybe just a whisper, and your world shifted, or maybe just began to shift. Maybe you saw the real behavior of your local holy man and you were rattled. Maybe, like so many people, you actually read your holy book without blinders and carefully curated apologetic study guides and found them wanting at least and morally inexcusable and false at worst. If, like the vast majority of people, you were carried along by inertia and habit of practicing the faith you were statistically 80% or more likely to have been born into, something happened that made you see the tide you'd always been carried in from a remove, and it suddenly looked different. Suddenly, it felt strange. Maybe a wife or a husband or even a child that you saw as a comrade or a partner in your particular take on eternity pulled away, tearing a hole in your being and betraying who you thought you were and who you thought they were, leaving your lonely mind at night unable to explain away the doubts they expressed, unable to ignore the pain and confusion that drove them to that place, the tiny mustard seed of doubt sprouting in the crevices of your mind, no matter how hard you tried to deny it the sunlight of reason. Maybe you peeked beyond the approved canon in history and found your mortal instruments of God, your Mohammed, your Joseph Smith, your parish priest to be broken, flawed, grandstanding fabulists and liars whose pious grandiosity was cover for base, sexually predatory proclivities, and it was like somebody killed a part of you. Maybe it wasn't any one thing, but maybe a million little things, 1,000 nagging doubts, as our Mormon friends say, you tossed up on the shelf and tried to ignore until one day a loud groan led to a clattering crash, and the whole mess collapsed around you. What you thought was your fortress of faith was a house of cards made out of the lies that others told you, and worse yet, the ones you told yourself. Or maybe, if you're listening to this podcast in secret somewhere, you're just beginning to see the cracks, to hear the whispers of doubt bubbling up from the depths of your being, and you're terrified of what that could mean and what your future looks like. But for those reasons or countless others I didn't list, if your shelf broke, your shelf broke. The glorious sunrise on the eastern horizon where you were told your eternity lies is just a badly painted backdrop. And now, whether you wanted it or not, you've lost family, community, an eternal plan, and the answers to life, the universe, and everything. Maybe you're one of the very lucky few who escaped unscathed, intact and without major losses, but statistically you're a rarity, so congrats on that. But more likely the damage sustained in leaving your faith is substantial. It can be as bad or worse than the death of a loved one. It can be the death of a significant part of oneself. And I want to quote our friend Dr. Marlene Winnell, who was on the show a few months back, who coined the term religious trauma syndrome, or RTS. Much of her work focuses on the trauma of being in religion and the harm indoctrination causes. But here specifically, she's talking about the very real trauma that can occur when, for whatever reason, a person finds they must leave it. Quoting Dr. Winnell, losing one's religion is a special and potentially extreme case. A shattered belief system can be devastating and cause cognitive and affective problems, including an acute sense of betrayal. Many ex-believers have anger about the abuse of growing up in a world of lies. They feel robbed of a normal childhood, honest information, and opportunity to develop and thrive. They have bitterness for being taught they were worthless and in need of salvation, yet never able to be sure they were good enough to make it. They have anger about the terrors of hell, the rapture, demons, apostasy, unforgivable sins, and the evil of the world. They resent not being able to ever feel good or safe. Many are angry that the same teachings are inflicted on more children continuously. They have rage because they dedicated their lives and gave up everything to serve God. They are angry about losing their families and friends. They feel enormously betrayed. And this is from a series of 3 articles that I quoted. I'll include them in the show notes. So why do I bring this all up? It's
because you don't want us to have any surviving members of our listening audience.
It's because I, and I'm sure we 3, want to acknowledge that loss, pain, anger, depression, confusion, despair, and loneliness of these journeys. At the same time, we want to acknowledge the courage, the honesty, the integrity, and truly the love required to step off the edge of the known into the unknown. I want us to give a 3-way avuncular hug to you wherever you are on this earth and wherever you are on your own road to Damascus. We 3 have had our own very different journeys, despite the incredible similarities of our origins, 2 of us being born into the same house. And we can talk about that in a bit. Our roads led us 3 to atheism, but yours may not, and that's okay. Or maybe it hasn't just yet, and that's okay too. Maybe your deep, powerful love of Jesus has led you away from a hateful congregation that hates in his name to one that does its best not to, and that's okay too. I know we have listeners of various faiths. I read your emails, and we're glad you're here, though at times might be a bumpy ride for you guys. Uncle Doug told a great story a few months back where he engaged in friendly dialogue with some of the screamy, hateful evangelical Christians outside of Mormon General Conference. They asked him where he could possibly establish his morality if he didn't believe in God, and his answer was absolutely perfect. And Doug, you'll remember this, and you said harm reduction.
Right.
Doing the least harm for the most people. So even if your journey doesn't lead to our smugly godless corner, even if it leads you back into a kinder faith than the one that the fate of birth delivered you into, even if you have no fucking clue where to go or how to get there, but you want that place to be a saner, safer, happier world for you and people you'll never meet, then you and we are fellow travelers. In reducing harm to yourself and others via reason and dialogue and sanity, if that's the star that's leading you forward in your long, dark night, your journey just got a lot less lonely because, as you should know from listening to this show, you have 3 semi-asthmatic middle-aged uncles walking along with you, which, while that sounds nice, is going to suck for you because we didn't bring a lot of water. So you're going to have to share your canteen, and we need to rest a lot. And we all snore.
Mark needs to pee every 15
Oh, my God.
minutes.
I need to pee so much. And did I mention that? But, hey, there's 4 of us, but that's cool. So
Yeah, and in contradiction of the old story, when you look back behind you, but behind the 4 of us, there's actually 5 sets of footprints.
yeah, super weird. Somebody's following us. So if no one had acknowledged the pain and the fear and the desolation you went through or that you're going through now, this is us acknowledging that. We've been there, and our message from the other side of the darkness is keep going. It's going to be so much better than you even dreamed. So guys, with all that being said, what would you have to say to our friends out there on their journeys? Maybe some at the beginning, some lost in the weeds in the middle, and maybe some just figuring out, where to begin entirely.
It's a big question
Yeah.
you've posed. I think that you're right. That I don't know. Here's the thing. I've wrestled with this for a long time. I've had a lot of people write into my other podcast and into this podcast asking for various advice. And the truth is, advice is hard to give because your individual journey is so different than everybody else's. But I think for me, one of the things that has really stood out as I've examined this idea of, what it's like to be on the outside of a religion and all that sort of thing is that attitude becomes everything. Having a good, positive view of yourself and of the world around you, the better you can do at that. And Doug, you talked about this to some extent when we talked about the Westboro Baptist. It's if you can have a generous and kind attitude toward all fellow humans, and you can also have that same generosity of spirit toward yourself, you're gonna make it good. You're gonna do great. There will be all kinds of bumps along the road. It'll be very, very difficult. People will hurt you, and will claim that you hurt them. There's all kinds of things that'll happen. And yet, if you come at it from a place of humor, where you can, and a place of kindness and generosity to yourself, to others, to those around you, you're gonna do okay.
Yeah. I think the trick is that's a great piece of advice, and I think that's huge to this journey is take it easy on yourself. Right? Don't take the horrible yardstick that you were taught to judge yourself and others by in religion and use it to commit hara-kiri.
Right.
Just take it easy. This is hard. You don't have the answers, right? And nobody really does, but you don't have many of them at this point. Give yourself time and take it easy.
And make some mistakes. It's okay. You can be wrong about things. That's the other thing, is go through life not knowing shit. Because a lot of people come out of religion and they feel like, oh my God, I suddenly know that something's wrong. I wanted to proselytize my newfound non-Mormonism and tell everybody, no, it's wrong, you guys, you got to get out. That's not going to help you either. The truth is, you don't know jack shit. Look around. Explore the world. Figure out what it means to you.
There's that, when as an adult, when a teenager comes to you after their first breakup and their world has been shattered, right? Like nothing will ever be good again.
Right.
Everything's over. The love is gone from my life. And there's not much you can say to that kid except it's going to be okay.
Right.
Because you know what his experience is, but you also know how totally myopic that teenager's being.
Right.
And a lot of these decisions that people make around leaving religion or making these, being true to yourself as far as your belief system is concerned, seem so consequential that they're debilitating, they're terrifying, and they can cause so much anxiety. I think one of the messages of this podcast is it's not such a big deal, right? It's less of a deal than it seems, and you're going to get through it.
I would say that not to belittle that heartbroken teenager's experience, because that is devastating and that's real, right? So I would say for people coming out of religion most of the time teaches you not to actually to use your emotions in full color, right? Mm-hmm. You're just to tamp down everything that's human about yourself. So give that up for fucking Lent when you leave religion, right? Right. If you're angry, be angry. Don't let anybody tell you not to be. If you're hurt, be hurt. If you're in pain, be in pain. You've got to go through this process. You're grieving, right? You're going to have to go through the process of, as Dr. Winnell said in that quote, of betrayal and anger and why the fuck didn't the people in my life do their research and prevent this from happening to me? Don't pretend none of those feelings aren't real, because they are. And it's okay to experience them and work your way through them.
The other thing I would say is that we have a different perspective because as you know, in this little middling niche podcast that we are, we get people who write into us with their painful stories, and we read them all. And there's differences in the journey, but the pain is all very similar. Mm-hmm. It's a painful process, and it can be very lonely. And we read all of those emails, so we can say with authority, you out there who are in those places, you are not alone.
Yeah.
You just don't know the other people around you that are going through it, but trust me, they're there.
Well, and that brings me to this point, Doug. Sorry to jump on you there, but something that's really, really important that maybe, especially a lot of young people might not quite understand, is you now live in the best time in the history of the world to take this journey. You have access to more information and help than any generation before you, even the generation this voice belongs to. I grew up, I was going through all this way pre-internet, way pre, I didn't know a single atheist in my life.
Yeah.
And so there is an embarrassment of riches available to you now. Not all of them are good. Right. Not all of them are bad. That's the price of freedom, is you kind of have to fucking figure it out, right?
Right. And you need to sort through what you hear and what you see out there. You listen to us, you listen to, scathing atheists, and they're madder, but they're also funny. Or you listen to somebody who's more serious and, takes it all, is all about just making good arguments, and you find what works for you.
Yeah.
None of this is about a correct path. That's the one thing that you can be guaranteed of once you leave religion, is that you can let go of the notion that there's a right way and a wrong way to do this life. There isn't.
There's even
no
two
such
alike.
thing.
There aren't even two alike.
Right.
The three of us who grew up, Doug and I grew up in the same house. Dan, you lived 3 blocks from us or something like that.
Yeah, half a mile.
Our journeys are completely different.
Yep.
Even though Doug is practically my twin. That's how different all of these approaches are. And so religion is the false promise that there is one way. Well, you've given that up, right? Mm-hmm. When you walked out the church door, you gave up the possibility of a single way to whatever, a single way to the truth, to enlightenment. There isn't one. And
there's not even one way to live your life, let alone one way to live all of the lives.
Yeah.
Try a bunch of ways of living.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Get out there and just try some shit.
Mm-hmm. And not to strain the metaphor of that broken-hearted child or teenager, but there's no language you can say to that kid at that time, right, that's going to make it better for him or her. All you can say is it's going to get better. You're just going to have to go through this. It's going to suck for you for a while, but you'll be better for it. You'll be stronger. You'll be a more complete person. It just sucks right now.
Right.
It gets better.
And sorry, Dan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of this is just sort of, these are steps on the road to becoming confident and comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the ultimate key to all of this, is that if you can find a way to respect you, to make to craft yourself into a person that you love, that you respect, that you can honor. And that may mean, cutting out toxic people from your life that you love, or it may mean taking steps that you're scared to take, and it may mean like sitting through some very rough sadness.
But scars mean wisdom.
Once you get and do it skillfully.
Yeah.
Get a therapist if it'll help you, and it certainly helped me dramatically. Get Get any help that you can. Find a guru that you like and sit with them until they stop making sense, and then leave. It's always fine for you to be good at something or enjoy something and then not.
Right.
Yeah. And it's all in service of honoring yourself. And once you do that, it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be bad to any man.
So there's a great quote, and Dan has this great point about it's got to start with you. It's got to start about learning, and you've probably been taught not to do this, learning to love and respect yourself pretty profoundly. And there's a great quote. Chrissy Stroop, our friend Chrissy Stroop, just released her anthology, Empty the Pews, and I've got the book. It's wonderful stories, just exactly what we're talking about now, of people leaving religion for 100 different reasons. And there's a quote in the book that's so amazing that said, Christianity teaches us to love our neighbors like ourselves, and then it teaches us not to love ourselves very much. And
that's amazing.
That's such a bullseye, right?
Yeah.
And these control systems are made to work over you by making you despise yourself. And that's just if you're a cis white man in Christianity. Yeah. If you're anything else, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you're queer, if you're disabled, boy, are you taught to hate yourself. Yeah. What did you do that God cursed you in this way? Right? So you've got to just vomit that shit up and forget loving Christ because he's just a story. Love the thing closest to you, which is you.
Yeah.
And everything else will be easier after that.
I love that image of vomiting up the shit that they implanted in you. Because the truth is that they have buried some landmines deep in your psyche.
Yeah.
And for the rest of your life, you're going to be wandering around and you're going to step on one. And you're going to blow up for a second. And you just got to get good and resilient at understanding what that is and why it's there. And then just slowly cutting it away. You just got to get rid of it.
Does that happen to you?
No, never.
Is there still...
No.
Dan?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm totally fine.
The programming's still there. I haven't been religious for more than 30 years, and they're still pretty. That's never going to go away, right?
Well, what's fun about it though is that after a while, the first few times that you have to like extract some of this stuff from your brain, it hurts and it's terrifying, and it's so disorienting, and you don't know where you are. Eventually, though,
you exercise the muscle.
I'm 25 some odd, or probably almost 30 years out of religion myself, and it's like when I catch those things in myself, I get to go, oh, that's there. Wow, that's fucked up, and it's kind of fun. It's like this weird game where I'm playing with my psyche and with my training, just going, holy shit. How long have you been in there? What is going on?
Exactly. It's like finding an old snack in the couch. It's just as long as you have that couch, it's never going to go away. So Well, I think love yourself, and if you can, once you do that, you can externalize it and love other people, and even as Doug says, look at these Fred Phelps, Westboro Baptist church motherfuckers with a certain level of compassion rather than the hate they want you to look at them with. And that's a pretty successful journey. That's a
win.
If you can do that. So we love you. And thanks for everybody who wrote in response to that tweet and the crazy stories and amazing stories. And every one of them was absolutely radically different than the other, which just goes to prove there's no one way. Yep.
Yeah.
Get out there and have some fun, you crazy snowflakes.
You only get one life.
This is it.
You better make the most of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Let's move on.
Moving on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's inspiring show.
Yeah. Hey, we'd love to hear from you wherever you are on your journey. Send us an email at howtoheretic.com.
Or if you're a member of the Westboro Baptist Church, don't leave us a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. I'm also on Twitter, so Westboro Baptist Church, don't talk to me there, at HowToHeretic.
And, of course, thanks to our awesome and amazing patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton, who God does not hate, for editing the show.
And thanks to all of you, friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Bye!